The night before everything exploded, I couldn't sleep. I stood in my backyard long after midnight, listening to the soft trickle of water and the creak of the old oak tree as it swayed in the wind. The moonlight reflected off the pond's surface, turning it into a sheet of trembling silver. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Otherwise, the neighborhood was silent. It felt like the calm before a storm. At the edge of my property, barely visible in the darkness, thin white stakes had been hammered into the ground. They hadn't been there yesterday. Each one was connected by bright orange string, cutting through my grass like a warning line. That's when I knew the HOA wasn't bluffing anymore. My name is Ethan Caldwell, and until recently, I believed that if you followed the rules, kept your property clean, and treated your neighbors with respect, you'd be left alone. Hawthorne Creek Estates was supposed to be quiet, predictable, and boring. But boredom attracts people who crave power. And power had just moved in next door. Linda Mercer arrived 6 months ago in a silver SUV and immediately acted like she'd been elected mayor of the street. Perfect hair. Perfect posture. Always holding a clipboard, even during casual walks. Within weeks, she was HOA president. She talked about structure, about uniformity, about protecting investments. Most people nodded because it was easier than pushing back. I didn't pay much attention until she started paying attention to me. My backyard had always been my sanctuary. The oak tree had been there long before the HOA existed, and beneath it sat a small coupon my father and I had built together years ago. Stone by stone. Late evenings. Quiet conversations. After he passed, that space became more than landscaping. It was memory. It was peace. Linda saw it as a problem. The first notice came taped to my door while I was at work. Unapproved landscaping. Potential community land use conflict. I laughed when I read it, tossed it on the counter and forgot about it. That was my first mistake. The second notice came a week later, this time certified mail. It mentioned something called reclaimed green space. That phrase stuck with me, like a splinter under the skin. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I went to talk to her. She answered the door with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. That pond, she said before I even finished speaking, was never approved. It was built years ago, I replied. With permits. She nodded, pretending to listen. Things change. The HOA has broader plans now. What kind of plans involve my backyard? She smiled wider. Community plans. From that moment on, the pressure increased. Surveyors appeared without warning. Contractors stood near my fence taking pictures. Bright orange ribbons were tied to my oak tree like it was marked for execution. I pulled them down every time they appeared. Then the fine started. $200, $500, $1,000. Every appeal was denied. That's when I hired a lawyer. Rachel Nguyen didn't sugarcoat it. She spread documents across her desk and tapped one with her pen. Linda's brother owns a landscaping company, she said. The HOA approved a beautification budget last month. My stomach tightened. You're saying? She's trying to take your land and sell the project to the HOA. The final notice arrived on a Friday afternoon. HOA contractors authorized to access property. Monday, 8 a.m. I stood in my backyard that night, staring at the pond. I imagined bulldozers tearing through stone my father had placed with his own hands. I wasn't going to let that happen. Over the weekend, I installed visible security cameras. Not hidden. Big, unmistakable ones. Then I did something Linda didn't expect. I talked to my neighbors. Over beers and folding chairs, stories poured out. Fines that made no sense. Threats of liens. Harassment disguised as compliance. People were scared. I showed them what Rachel had found. By Sunday night, we had a plan. Monday morning arrived clear and bright. At exactly 8:03 a.m., 2 landscaping trucks rolled up, followed by Linda's silver SUV. She stepped out confidently, clipboard in hand, already rehearsing whatever speech she planned to give. She froze when she saw the crowd. Neighbors lined my backyard. Phones out. Cameras rolling. Linda's smile cracked. "You can't do this," she snapped. "This is official HOA business." Before I could respond, Rachel stepped forward. "And this is private property," she said calmly. A sheriff's cruiser pulled up behind the trucks. Linda's face drained of color. The sheriff listened quietly as Rachel explained everything. deeds, permits, financial conflicts. Then Linda spoke. This land is meant for the community, she insisted. The sheriff looked at her. This property has been privately owned for over 30 years. Silence. The landscaping crew slowly backed away. Linda's voice dropped to a hiss as she leaned toward me. You're embarrassing me. I met her gaze. You embarrassed yourself. What she didn't know was that the entire confrontation was being live-streamed. By lunchtime, the video was everywhere. That evening, the HOA called an emergency meeting. The room was packed. People stood along the walls. Linda tried to speak. She couldn't get a word out. Rachel presented the evidence. Emails, contracts, money trails. The vote was quick, unanimous. Linda was removed as HOA president on the spot. Within weeks, her house went up for sale. The fines were erased. The landscaping contract was cancelled. The HOA rewrote its bylaws. I added a small plaque beside the pond beneath the oak tree. Built with love. Protected by standing together. Sometimes, late at night, I stand there again. The water still moves. The tree still creaks. The neighborhood is quiet. But now it feels different. Safer. Because the HOA tried to take my backyard. Instead, they reminded everyone that power only works when people stay silent. And silence, finally, was broken.